everybody. It's Dave here, and way too long. But with me is Darren Campbell, and this is GMG's Two Old Bloggers. How you doing today, Darren?
Doing excellent, Dave. I got my Christmas keeps on coming in the household. I got you can't see it really because of the video where my camera is, but I got the new Vikings hoodie a couple of weeks ago, which didn't arrive in time for Christmas, but I got it now, so I'm happy.
Cool.
I don't have very many Vikings stuff. Like I've got a Viking shirt, an old Randy Moss jersey, and now this. Okay. I got to get a couple of hats. I love those purple, like the purple hat that you got. Those are always, for some reason, I've never gotten one, but I need to get one.
Yeah, well, this is the standard. The only one difference is this has got a bigger Norseman on it, which I like. But mine's getting well used and faded, and it needs replaced as well.
Good.
But let's start talking about biggest news of last week is Kubiak, Gary Kubiak, officially retired. And what do you see as a post-Gary Kubiak offense? Who's your favorite for becoming the new OC?
This is a big question for a lot of Vikings fans. And let's say hi to Mary and Drew. They both had messages and shout out to us. So shout out to them for watching the show. Thanks, guys. But when we all knew that Kubiak was probably going to retire, right? So it was just the question was, okay, like who are the Vikings? Who is Zimmer going to bring in to replace him? And read the story by Courtney Cronin earlier in the week when Kubiak retired, and she's saying that the sources are saying, or the scuttlebutt is that the Vikings are going to go internal. Oops, I froze there for a second. So internal means I think it'd be either Clint Kubiak, the spawn of Gary, or or Rick Dennison, right? Those are the two guys that he brought in, part of the Denver Mafia. Froze up again. Must be the internet on our end, Dave. I blame it on Canadian bandwidth.
Well, it could be. I did want to just 1 second. Oh, don't tell me I killed it. I was going to bring in the pictures of the guys, and I didn't save my Dennison one for some reason. Oops, that's a little bit too early. There's Gary.
Yeah.
And Clint.
There's Clint. And spawn of Gary.
Yeah, and I forgot my where is it? At least I could do it small. The Dennison. Come on over. Here we go. Drop, and you don't want to drop. Well, the heck with you. But anyways, yes, if it's internal, it is most likely between Dennison and Kubiak. My guess is Kubiak. Unless they do the two-headed co-offensive coordinators like they do the co-defensive coordinators, and it's Kubiak and Dennison.
And you know what? That may be how it goes, and as well. And I'll get into. I hadn't really been thinking, and I was damn well hoping that we wouldn't do the thing, but it's quite possible that might happen. But initially, I was thinking, well, Gary, he's retired. He's brought his boy in with him, both in Denver and then to Minnesota, and it's going to be Clint, right?
Right.
But when you look at Clint's resume, he's like 33. Okay, that's nothing against him because Sean McVay is a head coach, and he's been a head coach for 4 years, and I think he's like 36 now or something. And
right, and you got LaFleur up with the Packers, and there's plenty of young guys.
Yeah. So the age isn't the issue, but just looking at his coaching resume, he's coached at Texas A&M, he coached at Kansas. I didn't realize, I totally forgot that this is his second stint with the Vikings, that he'd actually been with us in 2013 and 14. with Frazier, and then with Zimmer the one year, and then he was with Denver, of course. But he's always been a positional coach.
Right.
He's never been a coordinator anywhere. He's coached at college or the pro level. And but what's really impressive is, remember when Cousins was saying about that, how Clint Kubiak really helped him this year reach another level? You remember that?
Yeah.
You do? I don't.
No, it was at the beginning, and this is the one thing that's an advantageous. If they select Clint, it's advantageous to the Vikings. The last 2 seasons with Clint there as Cousins' quarterbacks coach, obviously Clint was the one passing into plays. They were called down from up high on Gary, and Clint was on the sideline passing the information. But the benefit is the last 2 seasons statistically, even with the high interceptions this year at the very first 5 games, Kirk Cousins has had his best 2 seasons of his career. Part of that is on Clint Kubiak. Now, since Kirk Cousins is technically under contract for the foreseeable future, it makes sense to keep the one person that has improved Cousins' play the most still driving Kirk Cousins. To me, I can see that argument. I can see it very well. Whether Clint will get the job is unknown at this time. I suspect that he will, but it's unknown. That one point, I think, puts him above of most other external candidates, and even Rick Dennison, because of what he does with Kirk Cousins. And if you want to succeed, your quarterback needs to succeed.
Yeah.
And he's the only one that has done that so far. Now, the detractor on Clint is that, like you said, his resume. It's relatively small. He has, when he came in under Frazier, I'm trying to remember the offense we ran under Frazier.
Well, we had Musgrave as the OC then, so I think it was sort of a West Coast type
sort
deal.
of West Coast-ish. And then under Norv Turner, it was Eric Coryell. And then when we went back under Sherman, it was
ground Coryell.
Yeah, well, but his base Eric Coryell style passing game. And then under Shermer and Stefanski. Was he here with Shermer? I'm trying to remember. 17?
No, he wasn't. No, because he just came in with Kubiak in 2009.
Right.
Yeah, came with Daddy.
And under Stefanski, that is the wide zone, which is derivation of the West Coast. Now, the Vikings so far have had Norv Turner, which was Eric Coryell. They brought in John D. Filippo, which was more of a RPO pass-heavy Earhart Perkins style offense. You had brought in Pat Shermer. Shermer ran a more West Coast. You brought in Stefanski, which took the West Coast, and then the development of the wide zone. From that, it's more of what it is. West Coast designed for quick passing, which generally helps the quarterback, versus the long seven-step drops like Norv Turner had Teddy doing. Yeah. And then that continuity stays there. The wide zone is the current fashion in the league. Most of your top teams run it. It's designed to defeat the cover 3 by causing mismatches on the sidelines or mismatchings over the middle. I don't see anybody else available that runs it. And like I said, if it keeps Kirk Cousins happy and it improves his play, which it has, why change?
Yeah, those are great points, Dave. And I'm going to take a look at it from a non-Kirk comfort side of things, and just looking at the resumes again, as my screen keeps on freezing. But again, Clint's has never called plays at the NFL level, or never been a coordinator at the NFL or college level. There's that. Whereas Dennison, as I looked at Dennison's resume, yeah, he's the offensive line coach, but he's been a coordinator with the Broncos twice, 2006, 2008, with the Texans, and also with the Bills. And you've seen with Zimmer, I feel Zimmer's history as a head coach is he seems to like the experienced old school kind of coaches. He brought in Norv was his first OC, then he had Shermer, then D Floppo, didn't go well. Then he brings in Kubiak to help Stefanski, and so he's taken Stefanski. You could say obviously was a young, sort of inexperienced guy too, but you had Kubiak there as kind of a guide. I kind of feel that now looking at the resumes that I'm thinking that if they're going internal, it's going to be Dennison, and I am not very thrilled at that prospect when you look at where Dennison's offense is ranked the years that he's been the OC. Like in with the Broncos the first time around, they were 17th, 21st, 16th overall. The Texans they had a pretty good run. His offenses were 9th, 10th, and 8th, and the last year was 31st, which is but they had some pretty good players. They had Andre Johnson, that was the Arian Foster. They had Shaw, was quarterback, and he was decent back then. Yeah. But then when he went back to the Broncos with Fossil Manning, they were 19th and 22nd, and then with the Bills, they were 29th overall, and he got canned after that year. So,
and if you look at the last,
it's going to be Dennison, but I will hate it if he is, because I just feel that with Dennison, you're going to get the same kind of ground, run the ball first. And again, we know that Zimmer's not going to bring in anybody who's going to change things up. He tried that with DiFilippo, hated it. It went sour, and that's never going to happen again with Zimmer. So I kind of feel like Dennison is the guy, and maybe they go co-coordinators where Dennison is like looking over Clinty's shoulder, just making sure the young fella doesn't fuck things up too much.
Well, very well it could be. Now, if you look at the current playoff teams, I think 3 out of the 4 are ranked 1, 2, and 3. When it comes to passing, the only one that's not, who's more run heavy, is Green Bay.
But they're pretty balanced.
But everybody else, it's 60-40, easy on the passing. And it's also on the points. They're generating they're 1, 2, 3, and 5 on point generation.
Yeah.
And Dennison, with his record, I don't see us getting anywhere close to that. We came closer this season with Gary Kubiak, but I think if we could open up some passing more, and I know Zimmer went to the more of the run, especially in those first 5 games, when Cousins was so bad, to hide what
Kirk,
the bad things. Now, I think if you have Clint calling the plays, I think he can stick in a little bit more. He's got the trust build up, working with Zimmer for a couple years, and then maybe put in more where we're targeting Jefferson more and Thielen more, hopefully a decent wide receiver 3 more, and Irv, and out of the backfield, the running backs, Dalvin Cook in particular. You even throw him out, lining up outside. That's fine. Do that and get more aggressive. And I think the key is aggressiveness on the offense. And I think the Vikings will take that next step up into the top 5 offenses. That's what I see. Now, there are some external choices that people are hyping. One, the great Flip Mozzie. He's very, very excited and adamant that we need to hire Anthony Lynn, the former head coach of the Chargers. And Anthony Lynn, before he was Chargers head coach, was Buffalo's offensive coordinator. Anthony Lynn runs an RPO style offense, the Earhart Perkins style. And if we bring in somebody like that, that changes up the offensive scheme somewhat. Do you see an external coach of any sort coming in? Or are there any you favor? No.
I don't see what I haven't even bothered to even consider them because I feel it's going to be Kubiak or Dennison, or like you say, maybe a combination of both. I don't think Lynn is coming in if he likes the RPO stuff, and we'd already tried that with DiFilippo, and Zimmer canned it after 8 games because we weren't running the ball enough, we were passing too much. He's not going to go back to that. We know Zimmer's set in his ways and that kind of on the offense especially, and he wants it to be run first, pass second, go through a dominant running back like Cook, and he's going to want a coordinator that does that, which is why I think that Dennison is probably his man. And if that happens, well, I won't freak out and break things, but I will. Because the offense, and we'll get into this in a few minutes, but because the offense has to take that next step if the Vikings are going to get back to the playoffs, because I think the defense still needs a lot of work. I don't think we're going to do that if we don't change a few things and how we approach stuff on offense. And that ain't going to happen, I think, with Rick Dennison as your offensive coordinator. So I'm hoping it doesn't happen, but I'm steeling myself for the fact that it will happen. Or at least he'll be like, as you say, co-coordinator.
Right.
I'm not thrilled about Kubiak, Clint, the spawn of Gary either, because he's got no record as an offensive coordinator. But you brought up a good point about his work with Cousins, and as much as I know you don't like Cousins, and I've shit on him a lot too, but especially this year, Cousins, and he does this all the time, but Cousins did do. There were a lot of times where he seemed to me like he was the guy that could, like, the offense was functioning well with him and he was playing well.
As a top 5 quarterback. And then there was like the first 5 games where he was throwing interceptions off, brain freezing, the whole works. And you go, why can't we just have the good Kirk Cousins and keep him the good Kirk Cousins? Why do we have to go through these times, these ups and downs? And by far, they're the biggest swings on a roller coaster of the, good Kirk and bad Kirk,
Yeah. The other thing about going RPO is that really the best use of Cousins? Is like, can you do that effectively with a guy who's not the most mobile guy? Like, he's not a Josh Allen or a Lamar Jackson or a Deshaun Watson who can move around and that's just not his strength. I just couldn't see him naturally like putting the ball into the running back's stomach and then pulling it out and then running. That's just not something that I think Kirk would be good at. So probably the offense they're running now is the one that he's good at. He'd be comfortable in, and but they just. A few things need to happen for that to be running at the optimum level.
Mm-hmm. And to
which
me,
we can get into now.
Which to me is increasing our pass ratio over the run ratio. And just like I said, the top 3 teams that are in the playoffs, where you're at, and if you want to take all last 4 teams, where you're at least balanced and you're not heavy run, where let's exploit the run. It was, if you looked at the statistics for Justin Jefferson when the Vikings threw to him, it's like 3-1. They threw him just, a quarter of the time in the first half and then 3 times as much in the second half, right? When most of the time we're trying to play catch up last season.
Yeah.
Flip that, right? Mm-hmm. Throw heavy in the first half, build up a lead, and then you've got the run. You can run Dalvin Cook all day and Alexander Madison to kill the clock, right, and protect a 2 or 3 touchdown lead. But you can't get that 2 or 3 touchdown lead starting with those run, and that 8-10 minute drive. Yes, owning the time of possession most of the time wins you the game. But not always. But guaranteed, scoring the most points wins you the game 100% of the time. That's the route we should go, in my opinion.
Thank you, John Madden. Scoring, if you score the most points, if you score more points than the other team, you're probably going to win. Boom.
That's right. Works every time.
Yeah, it works every time. But yeah, yeah, we've talked about it. I think we're going internal here, and it's either Dennison or Kubiak. I'm thinking it's Dennison. I'm hoping I'm wrong.
I'm thinking it's Kubiak.
And of the two of those guys, I think I'd like to see Kubiak get a shot if we're going to go internal like that. As long as it's not like Clancy Barone or whoever our tight end coach is. So
there is one benefit to Clint being hired that you haven't talked about, and that is still that Mike Zimmer can then probably call up Gary and go, hey, because he likes Gary so much and they supposedly get along great, call him up at their aunts and say, hey, and bullshit and whatever they do, and it sort of quasi keeps Gary in the loop.
Yeah, how about score first?
It's not run first.
Yep.
It works. Works every time, Ed. Works every time.
Certainly helps, Ed. Yeah, certainly helps. I just I know what you're saying there. I would. It's a time to cut the cord with Gary. If he wanted to keep being involved, he shouldn't have retired.
Yeah, but I think he retired because of his health.
Yeah,
I mean, he had the health issue. He's the only pro football coach I know of that had a stroke on the sidelines, and then had a heart attack afterwards, and still coached both ways. And it was the heart attack that brought him off the sidelines for a while, where he's the advisor here in Denver, and then he eventually became the advisor in Minnesota, and then took it over. I think for Gary, it's the health.
Yeah, it's a big grind. Yeah, but
a wee bit stressful.
Oh yes, coaching in the NFL is very stressful with all the crap that you got to deal with on the field and off the field. Those guys get paid a lot, and that's why they do. But it's not a job that I think I'd want, even if I was qualified. But I don't know.
You got to love it because it's a boatload of long, long hours to the point where you're sleeping in the office. And, it's.
Yeah,
I love coaching. I always did, and coaching's a form of teaching. But when you're sitting there and going, you've got so many people that you're responsible for and to and everything else, and you got basically the whole business is relying on you. Yeah, during the off season, the GM can bring in all the personnel, right? You got the owners doing their thing. You got the public affairs department doing their thing, right? And you've got to make sure all that works perfectly during that multiple 20-plus game season, whether it be counting preseason and hopefully counting postseason. It's a lot. And then the training camps and everything else. It's a lot. I mean, you got to definitely be a type A personality. Put it that way.
Yeah, you got to be ready to put in 14, 16-hour days a lot of times, especially during the season. Good luck if you got family. Andy Reid knows all about that. He lost a kid basically because he was never home, right? And the kid didn't have a father figure and stuff. But we're getting kind of off topic, but which sometimes is good.
But speaking of
yeah.
Well, I'm about to say, speaking of Andy Reid, before we go off air, who do you think wins the games tomorrow?
I'm going with the Bills, and I'm going with, unfortunately, that team from Wisconsin.
I'm going the opposite of you.
Okay, good.
I'm going the Chiefs, and I'm going to Tampa Bay. I think the Chiefs-Bills game is going to be the most entertaining game of the weekend. That's going to be a fun one to watch. But I think the Chiefs with Andy Reid, his experience and Mahomes and the team was there last year. They have the experience. They know what to expect. Whereas the Bills, this is their first time in the playoffs since, the Great Depression or whenever it was. And I know it's shorter than that, but it's been a long time. And I think it's going to be a very entertaining game. Now, on that Green Bay Tampa Bay game, the Battle of the Bays, I am hoping, now this is a hope, that Tom Brady reverts to his January superstar, super stud self and beats that team from Wisconsin, because the idea of that team from Wisconsin going to the Super Bowl makes me want to hurl.
Yeah. I've already hurled a few times. Viking Jerome, hey, buddy.
Hey, buddy. Joining us.
Thanks for joining us. Yeah, you're a little late.
Mary, disappointed with going internal, but I don't see anybody
may not
external.
Happen. It may not happen. Maybe when some miracle, Zimmer will bring in like this whiz kid offensive genius that, like, wouldn't it be nice to see him do like Mike Tice did? When he hired Scott Linehan, nobody had heard of the guy. Louisville offensive coordinator, and he came in and he did a pretty damn good job. Now he had Randy Moss, who made the whole offense run, but that ended up being working out pretty well instead of going with the old tired boys that Zimmer seems to like doing. I don't know, Mary, but yeah,
we'll see. I do know for a fact that they have interviewed some coaches already for the job.
Well, they probably have to interview like a minority candidates, right? That's part of
that's required, yes, by the NFL unless they want to pay a fine. But I do know that they have interviewed at least one external candidate that I'm aware of.
I just feel that if last year the Vikings were fourth in yards generated, like the yards that they got, but 11th in points, which sounds great. But when you've got like a quarterback who was 6th in TD passes and 8th in passing yardage, a running back who was 2nd in rushing yardage, you got a wide receiver who was 4th in receiving yardage, and Thielen was 3rd in TD catches, I think you should be
higher,
be better than 11th in score in the amount of points you scored.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel if we have the right offensive coordinator in there, we fix the interior offensive line, i.e. get rid of Dozier and replace him with anybody, and we get a third wide receiver who's a threat, this offense is going to be a top 5 offense.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and you need to be that Super Bowl contender.
And that is why, even though we seem to be a little bit, I feel that there's a lot of pessimism among Vikings fans about next year. The offense is where you can get a little bit excited about what could happen in 2021.
And that I very much look forward to. And that's where our optimism lies. We know on the defense should get better just because we're bringing back healthy players. And you're going to get some in the draft, hopefully. Then second year for the young guys that were around this year, that's going to improve somewhat. But what we need is that top 5 offense, and that could happen.
It could. And the defense going from like being ranked 30th to 29th or whatever they were to being like 20th or somewhere in the 19, 15th, 20, 21 range or somewhere like that.
Should be enough.
Yeah.
With that, any last words?
No, I'm just hoping that that team from Wisconsin loses tomorrow. It's rare that I'll cheer for Tommy Boy because he's won so much, but this is going to be one of those days where I'm going to be cheering for the Bucks and cheering for Antoine Winfield Jr.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're going to be 2 very good games. I'll be very surprised if either one is lopsided. And I feel that the Chiefs last week showed they're kind of ripe to get beat at home. And the Bills, I think, have got even though they haven't been there very much and they're inexperienced, they got the mojo. And they got a guy that's named Stephon Diggs who wants it badly.
Yes. Yes, he does. It could happen. It could happen. I did check the weather at both places. Tomorrow, the first game is the one, Battle of the Bays. You're looking at temperatures right around freezing, no precipitation that I saw. I don't remember seeing. And then the later game between Mahomes and Josh Allen, you're looking at around 40 or upper 30s, 40. So there's no drastic weather that's going to affect anything. So they should be good.
Like you said, if Brady is used to playing in crappy weather conditions this time of the year, I know he's a year removed from it, but I'd be a lot more worried about Tampa Bay if he wasn't quarterbacking and they had somebody else who's just likes that Tampa Bay weather all the time.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Like I said, he played in the cold before his whole career, so I'm hoping for super stud Tom Brady to show up. We'll see.
And then to suck 2 weeks from now.
Yes. Hey, I'm cool. All right, everybody. You have a great weekend. Stay safe. Stay healthy. And as always, Skol Vikings!
Skol Vikings!
Thank you for watching or listening. As always, if you like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. And if you're listening to the podcast, please rate us on your favorite aggregator. Skol, everybody.